Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Manny Cabo, and welcome to another episode of Mojo for Musicians. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another fun and value-filled episode of Mojo for Musicians. Wow, it's already episode 12. Very hard to believe. But this particular episode definitely hits home because it was actually inspired by true and, let me tell you, some traumatic events that transpired in my life back in December. As you all know from some previous episodes, that I recently lost my dad to COVID back on December 1st. And along with that loss came a profuse onslaught of anxiety and stressful moments from the anticipation of good or bad news from the doctors, with respect to my dad's condition, to the 26 long days, which at times seemed endless, watching my poor wife suffer with perpetual and sporadic spikes of fever and headaches, not knowing if they were going to subside. But I don't want to harp on those, dreadful moments because I've lived them already, and believe me, I wouldn't wish them on anyone. But the point I'm trying to make is that during those, shall I say, punishing moments, I found solace and serenity through meditation and, above all, self-hypnosis. Now, before you dismiss this concept as a sham, because let's face it, Hollywood has certainly tainted the profession as a hoax or even a means of entertainment, to coax people into doing things against their will. And that's definitely not what I'm presenting to you all today. The fact of the matter is, guys, that hypnotherapy can be an effective tool in diminishing or even obliterating symptoms of insomnia, anxiety, pain. And many people have even seen successes in giving up smoking and controlling weight loss. And believe me when I tell you, overcoming any of these topics is a huge undertaking. And in all honesty, had it not been for meditation combined with a steady dose of hypnotherapy, I don't know if I would have been able to handle the ongoing stress on top of both my crazy careers being at a standstill. And the loss of my yearly wages as an entertainer, because let's face it, we musicians out there are suffering hardcore. And yeah, I know everyone is suffering, but when you depend on your art and your live performances as a means of sustenance, and there are no shows, the world becomes bleak and desperation sets in. And I know because I'm right there with all of you. And that's why even in the most dismal moments of my life, I went out of my way to create this show to afford you guys as many solutions as I possibly can, to diminish the blows that this pandemic has dealt us and to hopefully overcome these issues to prepare us for when it's over and we can finally get back to normalcy. And believe me, we will. Trust me, we will sooner than we think. We just have to believe in ourselves, believe in our craft, and above all, believe hypnotherapy can help you with it all. And today's guest is definitely someone who can convince you way better than I can. But before I bring her on, I wanted to go over a couple of the benefits that hypnotherapy can afford all of us, specifically we musicians who, let's face it, can be pretty emotional creatures. And when those emotions hamper our flow or outlet of creativity, then things can get a little frightening and even unstable. So let me briefly highlight a few of the benefits that I think can best assist we artists, especially during these times. And the cool thing is that hypnotherapy can be used as both a standalone or a supplemental treatment, as I did, combining it with my daily meditations, which, by the way, I created a free Mojo meditation for all of you to download for free. Yes, for free. Just go to my site at mannycabo.com, hit the podcast tab, and scroll down, and you'll see it right there in all its glory. Just click on the link, and it's yours. And I promise you, if you commit to doing this meditation on a daily basis, it will change your life because it changed mine. And there's nothing that I want more than to see all of you convolute all those negative subconscious thoughts and blockages into thoughts of abundance and prosperity.
So go ahead, download it for free. And again, let me know what you think in an email and share your stories of success with me so I can share them with all my listeners. All right, enough of the shameless plugs here, but moving on, let's talk about the first benefit of hypnotherapy, which for me is an obvious one because it can help treat symptoms of anxiety. Now, I already am the clinical type A personality that's always going 100 miles an hour, always needs to be organized and in control. And as of late, I feel like I'm perpetually going up against the clock ever since my dad passed because I don't know, I feel like I want to accomplish all of my goals and not leave this planet without doing so, or at least most of them, so that constant pressure is certainly not healthy or realistic because living in fear or with these phobias is not the way to live. Quite the opposite. It's a deterrent to successfully reach your full capacity of contributing your whatever unique gift is to this world. Essentially, the way it works is by stimulating the body's natural relaxation responses through the use of nonverbal cues or phrases, slowing your breathing, and just basically consuming you with an overall sense of peace and well-being. And who does not want that? Another area, or areas I should say, where hypnotherapy has been deemed to be very successful is in treating the various vices that we all have. And I'm talking about smoking, drinking, drugs, essentially anything that's detrimental to your health. And we all know that throughout the decades that the entertainment industry has lost a myriad of ridiculous talent to things like overdoses and cancer and suicides, which had they at least, and I'm sure this, entertained the possibility of hypnotherapy, who knows if they'd still be around? Especially due to the fact that the treatment can be customized to fit any individual's personality's lifestyle. And that's huge because, let's face it, we entertainers have a very sporadic, unique, and sometimes stressful schedule between shows, recordings, radio interviews, trying to make a living with the next gig, traveling. I mean, the list is endless. And you couple that with booze and nicotine, and it's a recipe for disaster, guys. Now, here's a thing to take into account. It's like any other method of improvement, which means you have to want to work it and you have to want to quit, or else the results will be minimal, if that. And essentially, the way it works is by replacing your bad habit with a healthier one. For example, you would replace smoking by chewing gum and then condition your subconscious mind into thinking that everything about smoking from the process tastes terrible, or that it's extremely undesirable, whatever the case may be, to make it seem like it's a very disgusting process. And lastly, and certainly not the least, it helps you control pain. And I'm talking chronic pain, which to those of you who have experienced major injuries, back issues, arthritis, you all know they can be unbearable at times. Even migraines, because believe me, when I get migraines, I just want to jump out of a window. Hypnosis can actually help you endure the pain to the point where you even gain control over it. And not just for a short length of time. We're talking weeks, even months. And I personally know 5 musicians off the top of my head that suffer from chronic lumbar pain, neck pains, carpal tunnel, that have absolutely impaired their lives, specifically during their performances. And we all know one thing leads to another. You try to forget the pain by what? Drinking, popping pills. And then before you know it, it becomes a lifestyle. And that's when things start spiraling out of control. So before doing any further damage or resorting to any of those malignant vices, my advice is, guys, give hypnotherapy a try because it might just be the answer that you're looking for. So when we come back, my guests will surely debunk any myths surrounding hypnotherapy and the profession, and hopefully at least entice you to try it. So stick around, because if you're suffering from pain or if you're anxious about what's going on in the world today, then you won't want to miss this one. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Mojo for Musicians podcast. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show to share your mojo with us, visit mannycabo.com and send us an email in the contact section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. And now, back to the show.
All right, Mojo Maniacs, thanks for sticking with us, because right now I have an incredible guest. And as I alluded to earlier before preparing this episode, I can honestly say that her teachings and her profession as a whole kept my sanity intact and allowed me to stay focused to my passions, commitments to inspiring, evidenced by the creation of this show, and more importantly, staying mentally and physically healthy. She's a world-renowned hypnotherapist featured in countless magazines and TV shows, including Forbes, Glamour, InStyle, and Dr. Oz, to name a few. She's the founder of the #1 provider of education in hypnosis with both Grace Space Hypnosis and Grace Institute, which is a world-class hypnotherapy certification program. And of course, a best-selling author with her book, Close Your Eyes, Get Free, which I own and love, and the reason why I brought her on the show. So let's welcome Grace Smith. How are you, Grace? And thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm amazing. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I got to tell you, I had to chuckle because while reading your book and obviously adopting so many of your techniques, it's hard to fathom that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you two were initially very skeptic until it transformed your life as well. And I'm curious because I share the same sentiment, and I was evidently wrong as well. And you used it to cancel out smoking, which is a big challenge in itself. And I truly, above all, appreciate your passion to make this a mainstream option for so many. And that's why I want to create a wave of interest in the music community, because believe me, I'm not exonerating myself from the many vices of this industry, but hypnotherapy has the potential of making a huge difference in so many artists' lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was 24 years old. I was living in the Lower East Side of New York City. I had a super stressful day job, huge, big quotas that I had to meet, and I had absolutely zero healthy coping mechanisms. So I partied just as hard as I worked, and I worked really, really hard. So it was a very unhealthy lifestyle. And at 24, I was lucky enough to get sober. And 6 months into my sobriety, I was still chain smoking cigarettes, and I had tried everything. I tried cold turkey, I tried the patches, tried the gum, tried the books, and nothing was happening. And I said, how is it that I could stop partying when partying was such a massive part of my identity, but I'm still chain smoking cigarettes? It doesn't make any sense. So someone said, have you thought about trying hypnosis? It helped my mom. And I, honestly, getting sober, I really fell to my knees through that experience. And I said, you know what? I don't have all the answers. Let me give this a shot. But I definitely went into that office with my arms crossed over my chest, not expecting it to work, fully expecting this guy to scam me out of my money.
Sure.
And what I found was one of the most relaxing experiences I'd ever had. It was fascinating, the things that my subconscious mind came up with about why it thought I should be a smoker. I couldn't believe how good I felt when I left that day. And most importantly, I haven't smoked since.
Wow.
So it was wildly effective. And I said, whatever this thing is that allowed me to transform my life as quickly as it did, and I went in skeptical, I have to understand more about it. I have to understand what the subconscious is. So I then used it to overcome a debilitating lifelong fear of public speaking. And in 10 sessions, I was the lead singer of an all-girl rock band.
All right. So wait a second. I have to interject. I don't know if you know, but obviously now that you've mentioned that you do, we musicians, we party a little bit. That may be a shock to you.
Just a tad.
Oh my God. So that's pretty fascinating. So now you could empathize from my world. So keep on going. I don't want to stop you, but that comes as a shock. That's awesome. Keep going.
Yeah, so I, found myself playing gigs all throughout Brooklyn and Manhattan in this rock band we called Castle Black, and not Lord of the Rings. I can't even remember the name of the show right now, but it'll come to mind. Was really popular at the time, and I was having so much fun. So it wasn't something that I was going to pursue as a career. And I will say, I never got to the point where I ran up on stage and I just wanted someone to hand me the microphone. I went from such a debilitating fear fear of public speaking and singing that I just wouldn't do it. I would cancel, or
That's
I wouldn't
amazing.
put myself in the position to be asked in the first place. I was self-sabotaging my whole life, left and right, to the point where I would still get fairly nervous, feel those butterflies. But instead of those butterflies stopping me, they were translated into energy and excitement, and like, okay, I'm more alive right now in this moment than I would be if I wasn't about to get up on stage, and really make that a fun part of my life.
Sure.
So it's interesting that I can probably relate to more of your listeners than most of the
Oh my God. So you're like the
yeah.
female version of Jim Morrison, because if you remember, he had a fear of stage to the point where he would sing, backwards. His back would be against the crowd. Yeah. So, wow. It's not as well, actually it is. It's a strange phenomenon, because you're going to have to sing in front of a full crowd. Like, how can you possibly entertain the whole idea of being fearful? But I do get it at the same time, because even in my experiences, I'm the total opposite. I have nervous energy. I cannot thrive on stage unless there's a packed house. But at the same time, I've got that whole Frank Sinatra where up until his last performance, he would throw up before the stage. Not that I resorted to hurling, but I always had that nervous energy to the point where sometimes I actually forgot lyrics, and I'm like, wait a second. All right, I got to get this under control, which is why it's so important to prepare. And what I used to do that minimized all that tension was meditating. And now I'm incorporating hypnotherapy into the whole mix. And that's just taken me to another total level. But go ahead, continue your story, because I'm fascinated now that you're a singer. Dude, I can see it now. Ladies, welcome to the stage, Grace Smith.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I was amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but the thing is, I had so much fun, and I would have never had that experience if it hadn't been for hypnosis. Never in a million years.
Wow.
So, a quick tip that I'll give everybody listening, and then I can tell you how I ended up making this my career full time.
Right.
So, what you do when you're in hypnosis, when you're in that theta brainwave state, whether you learn self hypnosis through my book or whether you work with one of our hypnotherapists, you change your association with those bright lights. And so instead of them feeling like this blinding, intimidating thing, they become this, like what we have our clients visualize is this angelic, beautiful, white, bright, healing light, this presence of comfort and love. So the minute you step on stage and the minute those bright white lights hit you, all the stress and anxiety melts away and you feel totally held. And when you program your subconscious, just thinking about it consciously already helps. But when you program your subconscious to have that association with the white lights, you'll be able to, you'll love it. You'll crave that sensation of being held and being so supported.
You know what? I'm going to interject right there, because that's actually one of my questions, and I really want to answer this one in detail. So hold on to that, okay? As they would say, let's put a pin in that one, because this is one that I personally am going to benefit from. So, and I have a few questions that I truly am excited about, because I know from personal experience, hypnotherapy, as I said before, has helped me mend so many issues and subconscious issues. And I know it can do the same thing for so many lives and so many musicians, especially during this dismal and let's just say capricious time that the entertainment industry is enduring. And my first question is directly related to anxiety. And what you recommend would be the most, let's just say, efficient or effective techniques that any musician can implement immediately, or just have in their arsenal of remedies, aside from the the ever so popular shot glass that I have resorted to many times myself.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, for a lot of people who end up getting sober, I'm not saying that everybody needs to, not by a long mile. Some people can enjoy a drink here or there, and it's not going to turn into a problem. But the thing about quote unquote liquid courage, right? Drinking something in order to get into a state where you feel more relaxed.
Oh, I like that.
Actually,
I like that. Liquid courage. Did you trademark that too?
I definitely got that somewhere else.
All right, go ahead.
But liquid courage, so an external substance that's causing you to get into that state, is actually in the long term going to be rather disempowering, right? Because you're going to need something outside of yourself in order to be in a state you want to be in. Whereas with something like self-hypnosis, you can get yourself into that state on your own, anytime, any place, without any external substance or needing anybody else's support. And so it's extremely empowering. You start to believe in yourself and your ability to get yourself into your desired state without needing anyone or anything. And that's a total totally different place for most people to live in. Then you don't
Yeah.
start seeking support through food or substances or unhealthy attachments to other human beings, right? It's a very empowering place.
Yeah, I
So
was
I
just
would
about to
say,
say that. It's very empowering, sure.
yeah. So one of the first things, the first step is just learning self-hypnosis. And you can do that through my book. You can do that through our app. If you go to getgrace.com, there's a 7-day free trial.
Hmm.
I've got a free video on YouTube. It's my most watched video. So if you just go to my Grace Smith TV YouTube channel and sort by most viewed, there's one that's got more views about my trip to Brazil a bunch of years ago, but the one that's got the most views about hypnosis teaches self-hypnosis. So you can do it for free. It
That's
takes a
great.
couple of minutes. But what you do is you learn how to get yourself out of this chronic flight, fight, freeze, survival mode and to go into what I call this safe zone. So from
Gotcha.
0 to 10, 0 is the most relaxed you could possibly feel. You're
Yeah.
totally safe at 0. 10 would be a full-blown panic attack. Most people live at a 7.
Well,
That
that's
is,
the one that I use the most, believe it or not. That
yeah.
little 60-second, that has saved my, I'm going to just say it, it saved my ass so many times, more times than I'd like to admit, but go ahead, continue.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're admitting it because we need literally rock stars like you to
Oh,
talk
stop.
about how much hypnosis helps because, Hollywood makes it look like something that it's not. But
Sure.
really, what it is meditation with a goal, and it allows you to get out of that survival mode, that stress mode, and live in the safe zone. And in the safe zone, you can hit flow state, peak performance. You can be in the zone, and all of your bodily functions work properly. Like, just to give a quick example, there have been numerous studies at the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, Yale, Stanford that have found that anywhere between 80 and 95% of clients experience total remission from IBS, from irritable bowel syndrome, from using hypnotherapy.
Wow.
So what this goes to show is there is such a physiological link to anxiety. We don't experience anxiety as just a mental state in a vacuum. When we feel anxiety, it totally impacts our body and our
Absolutely.
physiological functionality, right?
Yeah, it
And so
does.
if we decrease our stress and anxiety and we can heal IBS, which is totally physical, imagine what else it can do for you, right? To live in that safe zone.
Well, I have to add to that because just recently I got my blood work done in the past 3 months, as I mentioned to you before, prior to this actual interview, and losing my dad. I mean, I got my blood work, my thyroid was off, my liver was off, my cholesterol was off. And I'm talking, I'm like 6'2" and just barely 200 pounds. So I'm healthy. I look healthy, but my insides were a mess. And it's a proven fact scientifically that stress erodes all of your organs. So yeah, 100%, I uphold exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it's just so thrilling when people finally start to do this work and they go, whoa, not only do I feel infinitely better emotionally, not only am I sleeping well at night, but my blood work has come back, all my levels are normalizing. This
Right.
is what happens when we stop living in a state of perpetual stress.
Wow. Well, you know what? That's a great segue into question number 2. Certainly one that I'm obsessed with, which is why I told you to just halt 1 second, because it has to do with the subconscious mind and accessing those, I want to say, stifling patterns of behavior and limiting beliefs that we've either adopted or created because of certain unfavorable circumstances. Okay. And I'm a culprit myself. So, how do we best tackle those emotions when they come up? And by the way, as I said before, I love your 60-second stress relief method, which worked wonders for me, especially the segment that you have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, on subconscious programming involving the 3 E's: environment, elders, and of course, my favorite, entertainment, for obvious reasons. But perhaps you can indulge us in some of your methods of choice, because this is a big one for me.
Absolutely. So if you think of an iceberg, this was the Freudian depiction of how the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind works. The iceberg, the tiny little bit that you see above the waterline, that's the conscious mind. So that is our goals, our aspirations. That's where our willpower lives. The conscious mind, that tiny bit above the waterline. Our subconscious mind is that huge mass of ice beneath the surface that you can't see.
Right.
And it encompasses all of your beliefs about yourself and your place in the world. It includes all of your emotions. It includes all of your memories. It includes all of your bodily functions, right? We blink without thinking about it. Our heart beats without us telling it to.
Sure.
So literally 90% of who we are is subconscious. And yet we've never been taught how to access the mainframe and how to upgrade it. So if we were raised by people who had substance abuse issues or anxiety issues or insomnia, or whatever other plethora of human challenges there are out there, our subconscious mind is almost entirely formed by the age of 7 years old. That's when the wall goes up and our beliefs about the world and our place in it have been formed. And so all of a sudden we become the age our parents were when we were young, right? So let's say we're 35, and when we were 5, they were 35.
I'm like a 45-year-old eighth grader. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. We start turning into our parents, and
Sure.
we're like, what the heck happened?
Right.
That's because we learned how to be a human being based on who they were at that age when we were kids. So we grow into that unless we can access the mainframe and upgrade it. So instead of being fearful about certain situations, we go into them with courage. So how do you access the mainframe? How do you access the subconscious mind? You do it by going to what's called the theta brainwave state. So right now, Manny, you and I, we are conversing at what's known as the beta brainwave. So if we were to put sensors on our head, we would be producing beta brainwaves. That's normal waking consciousness. If we were to look outside the window to daydream a little bit, those brain waves would get a little round on the top, a little round on the bottom. They'd start to spread out and get a little more smooth. That's called the alpha brainwave state. When you're in the shower and you get a light bulb great idea, that's the alpha state. You're doing something rote. You're washing your hair. It doesn't require any extra energy of you to do something you've done 1,000 times. And so you have the extra energy to get a great idea, right? Delta is all the way at the bottom. The brain waves are barely moving at all. It's almost a straight line. That's sleep. We're not consciously online when we sleep, right? We're not aware of the fact that we're in our bed, in our bedroom with the lights off. We're offline consciously, but our subconscious is wide awake and dreaming, at least during the REM cycle. Now there's this magical place that is deeper than alpha. So it's deeper than daydreaming, but it's more conscious and alert than sleep. And that's called the theta brainwave state. And in theta, that's where you go when you're in deep meditation. When you're in theta, you feel so wonderfully, deeply relaxed and perfectly safe that you have the surplus energy required to create a new habit, to create a new belief. So creating a new habit is very energetically expensive. If you think about when you first learned to drive, right? With sweaty palms, you're looking in the rearview mirror and you're trying to turn left and you're trying to parallel park, and it's so much information to get yourself to maneuver this car on a 6-lane highway. And then before you know it, in a few months, you're driving with one hand, you're singing along to your favorite song. It's all roads, right? But think about how taxing it was when you first learned how to do that. And most people try to change their lives, try to create new habits, or try to get rid of old bad habits, try to have new beliefs about themselves when they're really stressed out. They don't have the energetic surplus required to do it. And so they push and push and push with willpower, but willpower is only 10% of the equation. So if you relax yourself down into that meditative state and then visualize yourself having those new habits or beliefs, you're able to create connections in the brain 10 times faster or more than you could from the beta state, from consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some of my biggest breakthroughs when I was really deeply meditated. I mean, I don't know if I got to reach theta, on a consistent level, but, when I really let go, and it's so true. I read the book In Stillness by Russell Simmons, and that initially sparked my whole passion toward meditating. That's why this particular technique of hypnotherapy has been such a huge help. It almost ties everything together. So I'm just glad that you're clarifying all these misconceptions, because I myself had to really understand why this has been such a benefit for me. And now I'm going to go into question number 3, because it's a bit more personal. And I pose this because of my own experiences and that of the countless and sometimes destructive vices that we artists have to deal with day in and day out. And I know now you as a musician, I know you've battled your own demons, and much success has come out of it because of hypnotherapy, evidently, but we're those moments where you couldn't suppress the urge or the pain or whatever negative emotion? And if so, was hypnotherapy alone the victor, or were there additional tactics that you implemented that help you diffuse those emotions? Because obviously, I know at certain points, initially when you were started, like you just discussed, you didn't have a full grasp of hypnotherapy. So, what are the things
Mhm.
that you resort to? Because I'm just being vulnerable with you because I have dealt with them, and I know there's millions of musicians out there that still have to get past the skepticism. And even if they do delve into the realm of hypnotherapy, there's going to be a couple of things that they're going to need to prepare themselves. It's not going to all hit at once.
100%. Yeah. So I would say there's three things in my life that got me on the trajectory I am, which is a life beyond my wildest dreams. It genuinely is, and it just keeps getting better.
Good.
This was my personal journey. It doesn't have to look like this for everybody. But number one was getting sober, because the truth is, if you've got a substance abuse challenge in your life, as so many do,
Mm-hmm.
you can do all the hypnotherapy you want till you're blue in the face. But if you go out on a bender and XYZ happens, right now, you're going to have to deal with those repercussions and clean it up. And it's going to feel like you're starting back, maybe not at square one, but the journey is going to be so much longer, so much more painful. So the fact that I got sober first,
And I read that was a disclaimer, in order for hypnotherapy to work, you have to want the change. You have to want to make that transition.
100%.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I quit smoking in one session, but overcoming fear of public speaking and singing took 10,
Wow.
because I just 1000% wanted to stop smoking. There was no part of me that wanted to smoke. But with overcoming fear of public speaking or singing, I'd have to actually get in front of the public and speak or sing to do it, right? To accomplish it, or
Of
to know that I
course.
did.
You're
And
right.
so there were layers to that fear. It wasn't just, it wasn't simple, right? And so that one took, 10 whole sessions, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. A study found that 600 sessions of psychotherapy results in an average of 38% improvement. So
Wow.
600 sessions takes about 10 years
Hmm.
to get about 38% of improvement in one area on average. And that same study found that 6 sessions of hypnotherapy results in an average of 93% improvement.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
sign me up, baby. Just sign
when
me
I
up.
okay, it might take you anywhere between a month or two to overcome a lifelong debilitating challenge. It's like
Right.
when you compare it to the other options we have. So that was the first thing. I got sober. So then the sessions that I did could actually work, right? Then I found hypnotherapy, and I've never stopped doing hypnotherapy. I found it in 2012. I still do it. Not because it doesn't work. It's because there's constantly new levels of achievement that I'm reaching and new thresholds and new edges that I want to work on.
Sure.
So
It makes sense. It makes sense.
totally. Like, I became an author. I had to do so much hypnosis just to help me write the book. But then I became a best-selling author. And then I became, right? So every time you get to the new level, there's more things to work on. And the third thing, truth be told, is I found the perfect life partner. I can't tell you how many people either marry someone or get entangled in a relationship that constantly derails their success. And I found a human being who constantly lifts me up and supports me. In fact, he's now CEO of our company.
Good
Like,
for
he's
you.
so invested. Yeah. And that is.
Oh, well, so wait a
huge...
second. There's got to be a little nepotism going on here. Come on now,
Well, let me back up real quick and say, when I first, had that fancy corporate job in America,
Right.
and then I, quit smoking, and then I overcame the fear of public speaking, I said, I need a certification in this. I have to understand the subconscious. So 3 months into being a part-time hypnotherapist, still nowhere near had it in my brain to do this full time or be on a mission to make it mainstream. Like, I was just helping friends and family. I'd been dating my now husband, Bernardo, for 1 month, and his father had a stroke.
Wow.
And he was paralyzed on the left-hand side of his body from the stroke. And 4 months into his paralysis, he was flown home. He was in Syria when it happened. He was the United Nations peacekeeping officer in Syria, one of the Blue Berets. So when he came home, he'd been paralyzed for 4 months. I'd been a part-time hypnotherapist for 1 month. And Bernardo said, do you think you could help my dad with his depression? He was incredibly depressed, as you could imagine.
Oh, my God.
This
Yeah.
warrior being paralyzed. And in our first session together, he broke through his paralysis and moved his left arm for the first time in 4 months.
That's incredible.
And that's the day I quit my corporate job and said, I couldn't look myself in the mirror if people continued thinking hypnosis was clucking chickens and swinging watches and Hollywood nonsense, when actually it's one of the most powerful, non-invasive ways to change your life forever. And people are suffering needlessly. So talk about nepotism. This is a family business. Can you imagine what a shoe-in I was to the family after that?
Absolutely. Well, no, that definitely
marry this girl.
that definitely validated the whole epiphany of the moment. Oh my God, absolutely. I can only imagine. I mean, I would have been in tears after something so traumatic. Unfortunately, you know, my dad didn't have that luck of surviving, but nonetheless to go through those trying moments, because I got to tell you, Grace, every phone call was torture. And if there was something that I could have done from any perspective, whether it was, you know, meditating, hypnotherapy, praying, whatever, I would have done it to save my dad's life. But I'm so, you know, I'm sure that Bernardo is fortunate that you came to that realization that was your calling at the most peak moment, no less.
100%. Yeah. So, you know, we're running a business just like any other business. There's challenging days, but then we look at our kids. We've got a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, and, you know, his dad is their grandpa, and it's like, nope, back to work. You know, this is too important to ever give up. And luckily we've had, you know, a tremendous amount of success now, but it's been a long road just because there were so many misconceptions. But, you know, conversations like this changes that. And I'm so very grateful to you for that reason.
I definitely want to make a mark in this, because I know there are tons, I mean, plethora, myriad, you name it, pick an adjective. So many artists I know on a personal level that can benefit from this. And, you know, I'm just going to squeeze into a question number 4, because I know you're a busy lady. You know, you have an empire to run, a lot of positive influence. So, and this is a question that I ask all my amazing guests, quote unquote, the signature question of the show, of course, which is, what's your mojo? In other words, what keeps you wanting to nourish and affect people's minds, bodies, lives on a daily basis? And don't get me wrong, I'm beyond grateful that you do what you do. And I love what you do. But man, at the end of the day, I'm shot doing what I do. So I can only imagine, you know, there's crazy reasons for you to want to continue doing this. Because, you know, like I learned at Apple, Steve Jobs taught us them. It's the crazies that change the world. So there's got to be a huge drive and impetus for you to want to continue to do this, aside from the evident accolades, you know, and all that craziness. Go for it.
Yeah. So I studied human rights studies at Columbia for my master's, and I found it so frustrating because it's called human rights studies. You would think it would be about changing the world and bringing human rights into the world, and you know,
Surprise!
And it really was about reading papers and, you know, which paper refutes which paper, and this, when I saw in my very first certification course, I helped a woman. The first session I ever did was to help a woman with her binge eating. And the very next day we were all eating lunch together, and she stopped and she started crying, and she looked at me and she said, Grace, this is the first time I haven't eaten a meal like it was my last meal on earth. I didn't even realize it until I was halfway through that I'm actually chewing. Like, I can't tell you how much you've changed my life. And that was after my first session. And I got goosebumps all over my body. And I was like, I have never impacted someone's life so positively in such a tangible, real way ever before. This is human rights. This is bringing human rights to people. She had a right to eat in a way that made her feel empowered and healthy and in love with herself. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I was in my certification course. It was my first one ever. So you're absolutely right, Mindy. There are tough days. And I think people think I know the impact I've had day in and day out, but I don't. What I see is when customer success escalates a challenge all the way up to the boss. And I read about the one unhappy person out of the thousands of happy people. It's when I hear from you. Seriously, your message to me keeps me going. A couple of days ago, someone told me she'd had fertility issues for years, listened to my fertility challenge series on the app, got pregnant, and they're naming their baby girl Grace. I mean, I was in hysterics. I was crying.
That's great.
I don't hear that all the time, but when I do, when people take a moment, and she started off by like, I'm sure you hear this all the time, and I don't, you know, so when she did, I was like, that gives me enough fuel to go for 6 more months, regardless of whatever challenges we hear. So yeah, it's the breakthroughs. It's people It's people living a life they're worthy and deserving of living. It's life without needless suffering that keeps me going. So for anyone who's listening, if you do, listen to our app, if you go to getgrace.com or you just give it a try for the 7-day free trial, you don't even have to spend any money. If you have a breakthrough, please tell us because it keeps us going, and it's so important. It's such important work, and I really am lifted up by hearing those breakthroughs.
Well, now I feel pretty happy and content that I've contributed to an additional 6 months of you pursuing this. That's
You
fantastic. So,
thank you.
wow. So you've been great. And I got to tell you, thank you so much, Grace. And you've just mentioned how people can find you, and I really want to reiterate that. So please tell everyone how they can find you, so you can keep doing these great things and continue to change the world. And hopefully we can convolute all this separation and hate and fear into more peace, unity, and love. So go please indulge us with how people can find you, Grace.
Absolutely. The easiest thing is just to go to getgrace.com, download the app for your 7-day trial. Just start listening to the areas where you're seeking the most support. From there, if you love it and you want to do more and you have the means, you can work with a Grace Method hypnotherapist through our team. We work with people all over the world. It's all over Zoom. It's actually more effective over Zoom than it would have been in person. And when you're in your onboarding process, we explain why. And then if you fall in love with it, like I did, you start off a skeptic like I did, all good. Then you fall in love with it bit by bit by bit, and you go, you know what? I want to be a Grace Method hypnotherapist. I want to join your team, Grace. I want to be handed clients and make a difference from the safety of my home over the phone, over Zoom. Then you can come to our certification program and become a certified hypnotherapist. And you can find all of that on your journey through getgrace.com. And on social media, you can find me everywhere at Grace Smith TV.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for those positive and hypnotic, full pun intended, of course, means of changing people's lives. Thank you so much, Grace. I want you to have an amazing week. Keep doing amazing things, and hopefully we can catch up once again.
You as well. Thank you, Manny. Thanks to everyone who's listening.
Absolutely. Take care.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, producer, engineer, or any other industry professional wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or just want to share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So just send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. Thanks for listening.